tea has been called nature's defense against cancer. Population studies linking green tea consumption with lower cancer risk has led some to advocate for the incorporation of green tea into the diet. After all, what's the downside? However, population studies can't prove cause and effect. It's not possible to determine whether green tea actually prevents cancer in people until you put it to the test. Prostate cancer is preceded by a precancerous condition known as intraepithelial neoplasia. Within 1 year, about 30% of such lesions turn into cancer. Because no treatment is given to patients until cancer is officially diagnosed, what a perfect opportunity to give green tea a try. So, 60 men with precancerous prostate intraepithelial neoplasia were randomized into either a green tea group or a placebo group. It's hard to make a convincing placebo tea, so they used green tea pills, roughly equivalent to about 6 cups of green tea a day, compared to sugar pills. 6 months into the study, they took biopsies from everyone, and in the placebo group, 6 out of 30 developed cancer by the halfway point, and then 3 of them remaining 24 by the end of the year. So 9 out of 30 in the placebo group developed cancer, or 30%, which is normally what happens when you don't do anything. About 30% go on to develop cancer within the first year. But in the green tea group, none developed cancer within the first 6 months, and only 1 by the end of the year. So only 1 out of the 30, nearly 10 times less than the placebo group. The first demonstration that green tea compounds could be very effective for treating pre-malignant lesions before prostate cancer develops. And even a year later, after they stopped the green tea, nearly 90% of the original green tea group remained cancer-free, while more than half of the placebo group developed cancer. This suggests that the benefits of the green tea may be long-lasting. Overall, nearly 80% reduction in prostate cancer. That is pretty impressive.
Can you help clear up confusion about teas? We hear a lot about green teas, black teas. I mean, there's so many different kinds out there.
Yeah.
How do you sort that out in terms of health benefits or trying to get the benefits from each specific tea? They're so popular right now.
Yeah, let's make sure we understand when we say tea. We're not talking about herbal teas like peppermint, spearmint, chamomile, which are called teas, or infusions. We're talking about the tea plant. So we're talking about black tea, green tea, white tea, oolong tea, etc. And then there's always Earl Grey and all these other things which are basically flavored black teas that contain various types of herbs or oils in them that gives them a little bit of a flavor, like bergamot oil, I think, and Earl Grey tea and that kind of stuff. They're all from the same plant, the tea plant, the Camellia sinensis. The green tea is the tea that's been dried but has not been fermented. If you allow the leaf to dry, just to kind of, before you dry it, you kind of let it go through a process, it'll turn into oolong and eventually black tea. It's the same tea basically, but there's chemical reactions going on in the tea as it's processed. The green tea contains most of these catechins, or some people call them catechins. They're phenolic compounds that are actually highly antioxidant, and they're found in lesser degree, and in some cases not found in black tea. So the green tea is where most of the focus is in modern research, although there has been some research still on black tea, because in China you see more black tea use consumption than you do green tea, but in Japan you see more green tea consumption than you do black tea. So that's part of the way it's a cultural thing. But it's the green tea that has these compounds, these catechin compounds that are so interesting, that are highly antioxidant. The one most famous one goes by the it's epigallin catechin gallate. So that's EGCG. We see that a lot, standardized, these standardized extracts or standardized products that contain these different catechins. So it's green tea that we're most interested in. White tea is interesting too. That's like, the first pick a little bit. It has a higher antioxidant capacity. It's more expensive and it's not as widely available. So it's a question of the same plant and what type of preparation you want. With green tea, there's an amazing and very compelling amount of benefits, so much so that I drink green tea almost every day. When I'm traveling, it's a little harder. I carry some green tea packets with me. I like to drink green tea. I drink coffee in the morning at home. I drink green tea as well during the day, as well as coffee. The research shows that 5 to 10 cups of green tea per day are what's normally required to get some of the cardiovascular and cancer preventive activity or benefit of green tea. Now, of course, 5 to 10 cups refers to 5 to 10 Asian cups of tea.
Okay, good.
And over here, we tend to drink our tea, if not in a coffee cup, but in a mug, which is equivalent to maybe 2 or 3 of these Asian cups sometimes. So it depends on what you define as a cup. So I would say if you take 2 or 3 mugs of green tea over here, you're probably getting an equivalent level of intake that you would if you're in Asia drinking the 5 to 10 of the smaller cups of tea, by the way. Now, what is the benefit of green tea? From a cancer point of view, the chemopreventive activity is very compelling, and this is based on large-scale population studies where they're looking at 49,000 people in this study and 11,000 people here, and 7 to 11 years out. So these are very big, what they call epidemiological studies. They're population-based studies. These are not controlled clinical trials. They're not, which are generally much smaller amount of people in a much shorter period of time because it costs a lot of money to run a controlled clinical trial. And the more people in it and the longer you go, no matter what you're measuring, the bigger the cost is and who's going to pay for that kind of study. So they do these uncontrolled population studies, and then they adjust them for certain kinds of things like, well, so many percentage of people are going to not drink this much tea a day, and then, some are probably smokers, and you have to filter out the people who are the smokers or whatever, because it's going to confound the results and all this kind of stuff. But what I've seen based on the literature, and I do sometimes an hour and a half presentation on the documented health benefits and the clinical research and epidemiological research on tea, focusing on green tea, there's a reduced incidence of gastrointestinal cancers associated with drinking green tea. Now, whether that's because of a systemic effect or a local effect, I'm not clear. With local meaning when you drink it and those catechins actually come into contact with the mucosal mucosal lining of the stomach, throat, esophagus, etc., and all the way down to the stomach. That's very possibly the case, that there's somehow some kind of direct connection, but it also may be systemic as well, because they do find these things in the serum or metabolites in the blood serum. And so GI tract, reduction of cancers. I don't believe there's any evidence that suggests that green tea consumption might reduce the risk of breast cancer, but there are some data suggesting it might reduce the risk of prostate cancer. So there are good data coming out all the time showing that there's a chemopreventive effect of green tea. And some of the cancer research centers are actually doing clinical trials on some of the isolated components of green tea, primarily the EGCG, this highly antioxidant catechin compound that they're really looking at as either as an adjunct therapy in certain kind of cancers or whatever.